Well, ladies and gentlemen, I must be honest to say that the politics today, I'm freaking exhausted. Like, the amount of bollocks going on in this politics is just like, wow. But before we get on to the main video of today, can I yet again remind you, if you haven't already subscribe to the bloody channel, because dealing with this news is just exhausting. So let's start off with the first news article. So let's just start off with an international ban. So the last couple of days I showed you, of course, the video I did yesterday around the dispute going on between Ramadan and Ash Wednesday in the United Kingdom. Well, the DA wants to have their own Ash Wednesday Ramadan dispute because John Steenhuisen has decided that he's going to wish everybody a blessed and happy holy month of Ramadan. You know what's really ironic is that the EFF, the divisive EFF, wished everybody a happy Ash Wednesday and a happy Ramadan. It seems the EFF are more culturally inclusive than the freaking DA. Anyway, let's look at what else is going on. Well, for those of you who don't know, Robert Mugabe's son got arrested for shooting his garden boy. Yep, that actually happened. And Prince Andrew got arrested for offenses relating to that guy in the US with the list. Yeah, Prince Andrew finally got arrested. But trust me, bro, it's not due to the list. It's due to him doing espionage and sending classified information to the dude with the list. I can't say the name because YouTube will strike the video. So, yes, that happened. Then in the United Kingdom, in Whitechapel, an area that used to be rather expensive, well, it's not anymore. Well, it seems to have been overrun by individuals from third worlds. And those individuals today had a big, huge Barney with a police officer over a Christian preacher. Have a watch.
Going fully against another religion.
What are you going to say? We're not back. We don't have control.
And this is East London, this is Whitechapel, Bengali area also. Muslim area.
He's offending our prophet. I understand. I understand that you guys don't want to hear it. I would recommend that you just move away and don't listen to him.
Well, you can't do that.
Yeah, but we live here.
But you're going to stand here.
But excuse me, we live here. So if we came outside, he's
not in he's not in your home.
No, by the end of the day, this is our community.
No, I hear you.
Now, there's a degree of irony going on here because according to this individual, you can't come to our areas in, checks notes, England. Yes, a country, traditionally a Christian country. But you see, this seems to happen quite a lot. Wherever many of these Islamic supremacists seem to go, what we generally tend to find is that the area suddenly is, theirs. You know where else this has occurred? Israel. And Israel has had quite a lot to say about that. Have a watch.
This jug handle is from the kingdom of Judea, 2,700 years ago. It has a stamp of the Jewish king on it. This coin, this little coin, from nearly 2,000 years ago, says freedom for Zion. Found in the Judean desert, it was minted during the second year of the Great Jewish Revolt against the Romans. How can Jewish presence in our ancient homeland violate international law? It's a contradiction in terms.
And you're so bored of hearing about Israel. And yes, I'm an Israeli shell, and I'm sure I got paid $7,000 to make this video. But the reason we mention this is because, well, the Islamic Republic, as of today, got elected the vice chair of the UN Special Committee on the Charter of the United Nations. The key principle of his new job is to uphold the principles of peace, human rights, and international law. Yes, a country that literally gives you a death sentence if you say, I don't actually fancy being Islamic anymore, and actually does it, who actually brutally massacred over 30,000 people in just 48 hours. That's more than died in Gaza in a single year. Yeah, they're now on the UN Human Rights Council. Well, who knew? Now, if looking at international news wasn't exhausting enough, let's turn our attention to, well, Ramadan, also known as South Africa. Now, you will recall that Mandla Mandela actually did a Floaty Boaty brigade all the way through to Gaza with Greta Thunberg, which got turned around. He got sent home. Do you remember that? Apparently then got held there for a period. He said he was a political prisoner and some other bullshit. Well, that individual says that he was treated so badly in Israel that he aims to do another one this year. And apparently he aims to, and I quote, bring Israel to its knees. Yes, some local retard is going to bring a superpower to its knees. Anyway, he plans to send several thousand participants, including over 100 vessels, and 1,000 medical workers, plus engineers and war crime investigators. Somebody should tell this fool that there's a peace agreement currently and they're not actually in a war zone. Anyway, the ships are expected to depart from Spain. If you've watched anything about Spain of recently, they gave 500,000 immigrants from third world African countries full Spanish citizenship because, like, reasons, yeah. And that amnesty to give them all citizenship was, and I quote, by the Spanish government to ensure that the elections go a certain way. So I'm often assured that the great replacement theory is a conspiracy theory, but the Spanish telling me it's a real thing, and that it was done in order to swing an election towards a certain political agenda. Anyway, I'm sure that was all just like far-right conspiracy theories. And Tunisia and Italy are also apparently meant to be involved in this, and then they're going to move towards Gaza in a form of single-file mobilization. Now, Mandla called on the president, Ramaphosa, to implement Parliament's decision to expel the Israeli ambassador and close the embassy. They already did. They expelled all the Israelis. Okay, the embassy's still open, but they already expelled everyone. Anyway, the South African Jewish Board of Deputies, their analyst, Adam, described the Floaty Boaties as political theatre. And to that I say, duh, obvious. And apparently they said that aid already enters Gaza via established channels. Yes, millions and millions of tons goes through the established channels, which I might add is not through Egypt, the other border that's with Gaza. Yeah, Egyptians give them nothing. They're just like, you die. But the actual country that Gaza continually attacks, both with missiles and through terrorist attacks, yeah, they're sending in food. But anyway, now talking of Mandla Mandela, you will recall that there was a king in the Eastern Cape that went to Israel. They came back to South Africa and said that they stood with Israel. The ANC government went absolutely bonkers over it, and then they had a big, huge conference, and they were swearing and shouting. This is the individual who brought the Israelis to the Eastern Cape, and as a traditional chief or a king of his kingdom, he said that he was just happy to partner with anybody who helped improve the lives of his people. And that's when the ANC government expelled the Israelis on the basis that they had gone to see all of the errors in judgment that the ANC had done, and the ANC felt a little bit embarrassed. Well, that king has now said that actually Mandla Mandela is a traditional chief, and apparently he got that traditional chief status basically from his grandfather, Nelson Mandela. Now, because of his anti-Israeli activism and his neglect of local communities, now remember that second part, neglect of local communities, the king says that actually he's just going to expel or take away the traditional chiefdom title from Mandla Mandela. Now, this idea of neglect of local communities is kind of normal because for many of these individuals, they don't actually want to be in the local chief's area. They don't want to be out there with the plebs in the local village. They want to be in Sandton and the big cities. And so they do go away for large amounts of time. I know a few of them that they're kings or, maybe crown princes or something, but they don't actually want to get involved in the day-to-day operation of their village because they deem their village to be kind of small and insular, and they want the big cities. And so according to the king, well, Mandla Mandela is just like he never goes to the local communities, and so he's a chief, but chief is very questionable. And apparently he's also publicly insulted and undermined the royal house. So you're a chief under our banner, but you insult us and you call us names. So the king accused Mandela of lying about being kidnapped in Israel, obviously a lie, after being arrested for allegedly entering Israel illegally, and of mobilizing ANC members against the king. Well, that he had done, because according to Mandela, he had come back, he saw the king was pro-Israeli, and then as a result, they were like, oh, to get rid of this king. And we saw that even in the news, where individuals were then undermining the king's legitimacy and saying that basically he was a kook. Maybe he was. I don't know. I'm not here to judge. Now, provincial authorities and traditional leadership bodies, I didn't know that these were actually a thing, said that the king cannot unilaterally remove a recognized chief without consulting, the premier of the province. So it would appear that kings have less authority than the premier of a province, and that apparently there is this thing called traditional procedures in our constitution, I don't know where that is, that has to be followed. Now, the dispute, as you know, follows all of the tensions between this king and his Israeli visitors who then got kicked out the country, and his outspoken anti-Israeli activism. So yes, Byron, you talk about Israel so much. Why? Because it really does actually impact South Africa a hell of a lot more than you know. And it's not through like my want or idea. I don't want us to just even give a damn. Like, South Africa doesn't live in Israel. Don't get involved in Israel. I've said that before. But no, these ANC retards feel that they just want to be anti-Jewish and anti the Jewish state for Lord knows what reason. Now, you know where we recently also saw that? You will recall that there was an art exhibition that was going to take place, and apparently South Africa had rented a space at this art exhibition, and we had selected this beautiful art piece that was going to go there depicting the war crimes in Palestine. Yes, we were going to showcase the beauty of South Africa by showing artistic renditions of Gaza being bombed. Yes. Well, Gator McKenzie, who had a brain cell, said, this is retarded. I'm not sending that. They can footsack. That doesn't show anything about South Africa. And the individuals were like, oh, Gayton's a racist. So they took him to court. Well, Gayton won his case. Well done, Gayton. And Gayton not only won his case, but he also won his case with costs. And the judgment didn't even give any reasons for the judgment. They were just like, this is stupid. Bongo. Now, the individual who brought the actual case against Gayton sought a declaration that allegedly there was ministerial interference in exhibiting her pro-Gaza art piece at the Venice Biennale events, and apparently that was all going to be unlawful, and then she'd be able to display the beauty there is South Africa by showing the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Anyway, according to Gayton, that whole piece was highly divisive and conflicts with any forms of social cohesion in South Africa, and it doesn't actually showcase South Africa. It showcases a conflict in a foreign territory. So yes, the department argued that the withdrawal of access to the pavilion space that they had basically rented doesn't amount to censorship, which this individual classed. They said that the only reason that their art piece had been taken away was censorship. Give me my free speech. And Gayton said, Futsak, you're talking rubbish, and the courts agreed with him. So Gayton won his case. So yes, I hear you. Why are we still talking about Israel? Well, because another very famous company in South Africa also is getting pro-Palestinian boycotts, known as Cape Union Mart. Now, the chair, Philip, sought an interdiction against the Palestinian Solidarity Campaign protesters who keep targeting his stores. And why, you might ask? Well, because he's Jewish. And they defamed him with claims that he funds Israel, he kills babies, and he funds genocide because, you're just going to be Jewish. And automatically, that must be your default position. I mean, I know I send clearly 99.99% of my salary to, I don't know, the IDF every month. I mean, it's not like I actually have bills to pay. But you see, these retards, they don't care. As far as they're concerned, they just want to go to an individual and target them specifically and make their lives difficult because insert reasons here. And the real reason that they can get away with it is because, well, nobody does anything about it. And in this instance, that's exactly what's happened. Cape Union Mart are constantly in court trying to get somebody to stop this from occurring, and nothing happens. Now, the Center for Applied Legal Studies has now actually joined Cape Union Mart's urgent interdict against the Palestinian Solidarity Campaign's protesters to just stop them from freaking protesting the store so that he can sell some merch. Clearly he just wants to sell some bitty shorts, but he's being stopped by doing that. And apparently this new legal studies board, whatever the freak they are, well, they are getting involved in the case because apparently if the case is successful, it has implications on political speech, hate speech, and limits to protest. Now, according to this group, The courts must assess whether the speech, the viewed objectivity in its context, and if it's intended to incite harm or propagate hatred towards a Jewish identity. The guy's being protested because he's Jewish. He's being called a baby killer and funding genocide for no other reason than he's being Jewish. There's no proof he sent any money to Israel, the IDF, or even put one little sticker in a car going, "I support the war against Gaza." They're literally protesting him because he's Jewish, and automatically he's tarred with the actions of whatever they don't like because he's Jewish. How is that not hate speech, you freaking retards? Now, if you thought all of this was bad enough, and I've got to be honest and say at this point, even now, I'm completely exhausted by the freaking news. Got to admit that I am. Let's turn on to some other bullshit going on in South Africa. And let's look specifically at the arguments being made at the SONA and directly against Cyril Ramaphosa SONA address and obviously Cyril's response. Now, there have been some substantial, let's say, clashes inside the GNU over BEE. Now, yesterday, the Freedom Front Plus and the DA made some comments that BEE was maybe a little bit overdue. Let's get rid of it. Maybe let's just progress the economy. Because in many instances, all the evidence is telling us that it's only being used by corrupt elites to self-enrich and that it's actually hampered the economy. We have reams and reams and reams of data proving that. Even one of the brothers of Mbeki, remember Maletsi Mbeki, says that he actually has proof from an economist's point of perspective that it's damaged the economy. Anyway, Durko's minister, yes, Islamist Durko's minister, Ronald Lamola, told the DA yesterday that they need to decide whether they're in government or in opposition, as the GNU partners clashed over the BE during the SONA debate. Now, according to Ronald Lamola, the only reason you wouldn't want BE is because, in a quote, "What? Supremacy? Yeah, that's the reason. That's the reason the Freedom Front Plus are against BE, because of white supremacy." Now, this suggestion that somehow they were all white supremacists was then countered today, at time of recording, by Cyril Ramaphosa, who said that why would you honestly want to get rid of BE? Because according to him, well, BE's had massive, huge impacts to South Africa, and they just are great. Like, we've really done well with BE, but that we're not done yet. We're not done yet. We need to do more. And according to him, the only reason you would want to go against BEE is because you just don't want black people to be wealthy. And so not only should you not go against it, you should actually embrace it, because it's like you wanting to liberate the country. And if you're against BEE because it stops you from getting a job or starting a business, or has detrimental impacts to the economy, or is full of corrupt people who aren't interested in building, infrastructure, and if it's destroying land, air, sea, ports. I mean, the only reason that you would be against that is because, you're racist. Yep, the president was saying that. And then he did this bizarre thing where he said that actually all the GNU parties need to go forward and embrace BE, because when they're in cabinet, they're not there for their political party or there for even their constituents. They're there as part of a collective, as part of cabinet. And so their wins are that of the cabinet and their losses are that of the cabinet. And they're all there independently of their political parties, even though the only policies being pushed by the current administration are ANC policies. Durko's pushing an ANC position. BE is an ANC position. Expropriation without land is an ANC position. NHI is an ANC position. And if you want to negotiate any of those things with the ANC tells you to footsack, because you need to adopt the ANC position, because you're only there on behalf of the president and at his leisure. So do what the president says. This is sounding very much like a dictatorship of the ANC, where you become a bland member of SLOP and the ANC pretty much does whatever they want. And why the GNU parties at this point in time can't see the GNU for what it is, an enforcement method of the ANC to get their own way, I'll never know. But at this point in time, Cyril is just like beyond a cretin. I actually watched the entire response and I just sat there like, wow, Cyril's an a-hole. Anyway, Cyril went a little bit further, saying, actually, not only do we need to do and we need to keep BE, we need to do BE harder. And I did think to myself, yes, it's the old communist trope. Real communism hasn't been tried. We'll do it better this time if only we do it harder. Like, the retardation is beyond the charts. Now, he said that, when he was younger, there were people in the mining industry that were earning more money than he was, and he still has a bitter taste in his mouth. So, Cyril, you need to decide, bud. Are you there in government for revenge, or are you there to improve the country? Because quite often when I listen to you talk, I think you're there for revenge. I don't think you give a damn about the country. I think you're there to self-enrich and for revenge. The rest of it is just like a byproduct of the job, like, something you do on Tuesday. But I think the primary motive for you being there right now is just to screw everything up, because you're doing it. By the way, dude, like, if that's your objective in government, you're doing great. You're smashing it, bud. You're smashing it. Now, the Departments of Employment and Labour are going to take Cyril's advice, and they're going to move forward with aggressively enforcing the BE Equity Amendment Act, which became in force in January 2025. And that was that sectoral targets would apply where your business has 50 or more individuals. Well, the enforcement of those laws is now going to be ramped up, and the department is going to get really aggressive, they said. And they're reminding you that non-compliance could have fines up to 1.5 million or 2% of turnover, or a loss of compliance certificates for state contracts where you astronomically know you will never get paid by the state because the state has no money. And I've got to ask the question, what the freak is Cyril smoking? He sat there for the first part of his address telling us how we need economic reform and economic growth and blah, 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 blah. We're on the cusp of everything. And then he's like, and I'm going to fuck it all up by doing B and really doing that aggressively. Like I said, retarded. Now, if that wasn't retarded enough, you know what really gets capital flowing into a country? Expropriation without compensation, because a new bill is being submitted called the Equitable Access to Land Bill, and it's now being published for comments. Now, it's intended to give effect to Section 25 and structure expropriation in the public interest. So it's basically, remember, you can expropriate land when it's in the interest of the public. Well, we now have a new bill that's going to define what the public interest is, would you know it? Equitable access to land. Equity in relation to land. So is that you saying white people own too much land in an area, we need to expropriate some of it in order to make it less white? Oh wait, you recently proposed that. I actually recall that. It was in one of the bays. I mean, you wouldn't really be aiming to do that. I mean, that would be terribly racist and stuff, wouldn't it? I mean, that would be you displacing a native population from where they live and rehousing them somewhere, a bit like happened during apartheid, I believe. You'd never do that. Would you, Cyril? I suppose you would, because remember, revenge. Anyway, let's not get too technical. Now, the bill is going to be separate from the Expropriation Act signed in 2024 and aims to formalize access to land, planning, and beneficiary selections, how they even select the people that are going to get the land. Now, AfriForum has already challenged pretty much everything I already talked about, and so has Solidarity, and so has Flotilla. They've all challenged B, they've all challenged the Expropriation Act, and they've challenged all these things, but the ANC really don't give a flying monkeys, to be frank. Now, on a very final point, the IMF said the South Africa's 2026 budget must deliver on debt targets and adopt a clear fiscal anchor to preserve any form of investor confidence in the Republic. Now, the IMF emphasized a primary surplus of 1.5% of GDP. Treasury projects this to rise to around 1.7% in 2026 this year. And the IMF endorsed lowering the inflation target to 3% and urged continual structural reforms. But please understand, not everybody in the ANC is retarded. The financial minister, Godongwana, is still trying his best to balance the books. But the IMF still says we need to fix electricity, ports, rail, water, all of that. If we just fix the basics, we could actually lift our output by up to 9% over the medium term. I mean, imagine 9% economic growth. I mean, that's insane, just by fixing all the things the ANC is actively destroying. And Cyril, during his initial SONA, did say he was going to privatize all of this. But then we hear that it's all going to be subject to BE. So like it sounded good. And then he just told us that he's not really a serious guy. He's not really serious in improving anything. And that's the news, ladies and gentlemen. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comment section below. Until next time, bye.
In this discussion, as one of many, are yet another example of the hypocritical obsession with Jewish presence in the heart of our tiny land. The claim that Israelis cannot live in Judea and Samaria isn't just inconsistent with international law and Britain's own Balfour Declaration. It is morally distorted. How can Jews be allowed to live in London, Paris, or New York, but not in the cradle of our own civilization, ancient Jerusalem, which you call East Jerusalem, Shiloh, Hebron, and Beit El? Madam President, it is our country. It is not 13,000 kilometers from our country, like the Falkland Islands. The Argentinian calls it the Malvinas Islands. A dispute you hadn't solved with Argentina until today.